Romance is in the air for Valentine's Day. And when you're ready to pop the question, all you need is the perfect moment to come around. And, of course, the ring. At BlueNile.com, you can find thousands of natural and lab-grown diamonds, plus legendary service from Blue Nile's jewelry experts who can answer every question, help you design a custom ring, and even plan the proposal. So seize the day today. Right now, you can save up to 50% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
Are negative Google reviews hurting your business? Don't let unfair feedback cost you customers. At Webamax, we specialize in removing false, misleading, and damaging reviews so your online reputation stays strong. Our expert team works quickly and legally to clean up your digital presence, helping you rebuild trust. Visit us on the web at www.gowebamax.com. That's GOWEBIMAX.com, or text us for a free quote at 856-840-8343. Don't let bad reviews define you. Get immediate help from Webamax.
Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
USAA. I think you're on mute.
Workday starting to sound the same.
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
Hello and welcome to Islanders Anxiety from Lighthouse Hockey and the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Dan Saracini. Joining me on this Monday evening via Zencastr is my friend Michael Leboff. And Mike, it has been some kind of week for the Islanders. We have a lot to get to, maybe the most we've ever had to get to in just a week's time from the last time we recorded. And I don't want to waste any time. I want to get right to the most important news for the Islanders this week. And that is that Pitney Bowes is now the official shipping partner of the New York Islanders. Pitney Bowes for all of your printing and postage. No, I'm just kidding. It's obviously not Pitney Bowes. It's hard to even tell what's the most important news, but I guess it's that Matt Barzal is now sidelined again indefinitely alongside Scott Mayfield. They join Ryan Pulock, Noah Dobson, Marcus Hogberg, Mike Riley. They join all of these guys who are hurt, and yet somehow the Islanders won 3 of their 4 games this week, and just losing the one sort of scheduled loss to the Panthers on Sunday. There is a lot going on right now, and there's still 3 games to go before the Four Nations face off. My head is spinning. Where is your head right now with the New York Islanders?
There's always one, I feel like one episode a season that we'll do, or 1 week a season that everything kind of just gets piled on.
Right.
And sometimes it's good. We've had a couple good seasons in the past where like the Islanders are winning games, and you see like teams like the Penguins and Rangers coming apart at the seams.
Yeah.
Maybe like there's some Maple Leafs drama. But there's also been some bad ones where just everything, seems kind of stacked against the Islanders. But I think this is a week like I've never seen before. And honestly, it's been more like a month I've never seen before from the New York Islanders. And it's so hard to kind of figure out how I feel, which is really frustrating, because there was a moment there Sunday night. Mark Gatcomb was on a breakaway, sprung out of the penalty box. Mark Gatcomb, who we've all heard of before.
Right.
Before he was called up. He's on a breakaway. and the Islanders are playing with Jacob Skarek in goal.
Yep.
He's 120 feet behind Mark Gatcomb. The Florida Panthers, the defending Stanley Cup champions, are chasing after Mark Gatcomb. Mark Gatcomb receives this pass. Time kind of stood still for a moment there. And I thought, oh man, if he buries this chance, if Mark Gatcomb scores a goal for the second game in 3, the second time in 3 games against the defending Stanley Cup champions, in a game where the Islanders are on the second night of a back-to-back playing Jacob Skarek in goal, their 4th-string goalie, with a blue line that was patched together with duct tape. If he scores this goal, this Islanders team, against all odds, this team that we all disliked so much a month ago, very easy dislike team at this time last month. If he scores this goal, this might just be a team of destiny.
Yeah.
And I know you and I rarely use that term, but if Mark Gatcomb is scoring this kind of goal in this kind of situation to lift the Islanders, to help them come back and win this game, you can't deny it. What happens?
Yeah.
Mark Gatcomb gets stoned on the breakaway. The puck rims around, finds Mark Gatcomb again, and a beautiful deflection on a shot from the point, and he scores. And for the next 3 minutes, I allowed myself just get completely carried away with this team. And I don't think I was alone. I think there's a lot of people who at that moment were like, oh man, this train is just not going to stop.
Yeah.
And then reality sunk in. The other shoe dropped. And with the New York Islanders, when the other shoe drops, it's not really a shoe. It's more like just an anvil that falls on top of your head. Because the Islanders blow the game, played fine, considering played well. I shouldn't say that. They played well considering the situation. But then, as you said, the news kind of comes out 12 hours later or so, 20 hours later, that Matt Barzal is out with indefinitely. And when you use the Islanders lexicon of terminology for injuries, day-to-day usually means month-to-month, week-to-week means indefinitely, and then indefinitely means if you ever think you're going to see Matt Barzal again, it's 50-50. I just cannot believe that this team has fought, and the fan base, by the way, too, has been along for this ride. Finally gets this long winning streak. They're turning heads. They're playing well.
Yeah.
There's a 2-week break on the horizon. They go into Tampa, gutsy win, and all it cost them, this 7-game winning streak, all it cost them was their best forward, their 2 of their best defensemen, their 3rd-string cult hero goalie, and that's about it. I mean, it's been, I don't know where we are anymore.
It's hard to know. It's hard to know because so much has happened. Like I said, I was thinking about it today. I'm like, I don't know of an episode we've done where so much happened in a week. Just not in terms of like just importance, but like just volume and importance. The one guy I forgot to mention before was Semyon Varlamov, who's been out for 2 months now and was finally this week labeled as out indefinitely, which is basically what he's been this whole time.
Right. The quote for him is he's in a rehab situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But whatever that means. And what's funny about the Barzal and Mayfield announcements today, Barzal being out indefinitely, Mayfield being day to day, is that, again, you talk about the Islanders lexicon and Islanders speak, that they both mean indefinitely. Because there's no chance that Mayfield is back anytime before the end of the Four Nations face-off. Just, it ain't happening. He's day to day, but you will not see him in either of the days that are leading up to this break in the middle of the season.
Exactly. And just to, I never take notes for these shows, and I it's just not my style, really. I don't because it's so, the pendulum swings like crazy throughout a normal-ish week of Islander hockey, let alone one like this. But I do hope you'll humor me here. It's like, I want to go back to the beginning of the homestand with the Islanders. Yeah. It's January 14th. So 3 weeks ago or so. They played the Ottawa Senators. I'm just going to kind of list off everything that's happened since then. Starting with that game against the Senators. And I want you to do is when you do when I mentioned something that you've completely forgotten about.
Mm.
No, because these are kind of, it took me a while to come up with this list because there were some big bullet points that were big stories at the time. Now completely memory holds because Matt Barzal just got injured and Marcus Hogberg became a hero and then got hurt in the span of a couple weeks. The Islanders won 7 in a row, all this stuff. So here we go. We'll start. January 14th, 2-0 loss to the Ottawa Senators. This was a game where Mark Gatcomb debuted because JG Pageau got sick and nobody knew who Mark Gatcomb was. They lose 2-0 with an empty net. And this was the first thing I forgot that I jotted down and I had to go back and jot it down. Do you remember how that game ended?
No.
Everybody was very mad because the Islanders didn't block an empty net shot from this Ottawa Senators. They like outmuscled the Islanders in the corner, and it kind of Nelson gave up on a play, right?
Yeah.
So that was a big thing for a little while there in the Islanders news cycle.
Well, and they were shut out by some no-name guy.
I didn't even jot that down. See?
That's what I remember.
That's game 1 of this exercise. The Philadelphia Flyers game was next, January 16th. This was the one where we recorded an emergency podcast afterwards because they had an unbelievably offensive second period. The season was over. Max Ziplikov nailed Ryan Poehling. We'll come back to that. There was no response from the team. The Flyers just chased them around and then kind of ragdolled the Islanders around. Season's over at that point. We say, okay, these games coming up against San Jose and Columbus really don't matter. Unless they win both of them and then make hay afterwards. But San Jose game, Saturday night. That was Brent Sutter night.
That's right.
Didn't watch this one. But the season was still over. Then the Columbus game, had this one on in the background. This is when Barzal and Horvat played really well together. Islanders come back, win. Sorokin starts getting hot. And Noah Dobson was hurt by Mike Sillinger's son, Cole, on a cross-check to the face.
Right.
Okay, so that's a Monday. That's January 20th. We're 3 into it. Then we go to January 24th against the Philadelphia Flyers. Again, Ziplikov is suspended. It's a pretty boring game. But what happened before this game? Tony DeAngelo, the Islanders kind of picked him up signed him from the KHL. He was going through the waiver process and cleared, which leads the way for Saturday. That was a win. Well, Islanders win in a boring game. Saturday night against the Carolina Hurricanes, big underdogs. Marcus Hogberg is in net. Ryan Pulock becomes the second Islander player in 5 days to be hurt by a former Islander player's son. The Islanders play great in this game. Very gutsy. Tony DeAngelo played really well. Very normal debut from a guy who's very not normal. Hogberg is awesome. Then he gets hurt. Ilya Sorokin comes in overtime, makes one save. Hogberg is named the third star with I think most people assume is like a broken finger, right. And does the third star lap. Islanders have won 4 in a row. But Ryan Pulock's hurt, so what's that mean? They got to trade for Scott Perunovich. He comes in, debuts against the Colorado Avalanche, who are coming. I think this is game 2 for them since the Marty Necas trade, or game 3. Yeah. So they're all the tongues are wagging about the Avs, and Ryan. This is the game that Alex Romanov becomes Scott Stevens. He nails Cale Makar. Simon Holmstrom's awesome, and Tony DeAngelo starts playing like 25 minutes a night for the New York Islanders, which we all saw coming. Big win. Sorokin really good. ESPN broadcast with John Buccigross and Ryan Callahan. It was a pretty terrible listen. Yeah. But that's just the first of the 2 ESPN broadcasts, because that brings us to the 30th. Then so now the Islanders have won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row playing Philadelphia. Huge game against the Flyers, and Max Ziplikov gets into a fight. And Ryan Callahan asks, "I wonder if there's any history between these two these 2 players." On the broadcast, the penalty kill's really good. They get a goalie interference call back. Mark Gatcomb scores his first goal from Kyle McLean and Ziplikov. I wanted that line to stay together so we can call them the Fortunate Sons, because none of them were drafted. And yeah, so that's now the Islanders are rolling and they go into Tampa Bay. This comes on the heel of the Rangers getting JT Miller, but the Islanders made their own move. They get Adam Boquist off waivers. He scores in his debut, a huge goal.
Right.
Adam Pelech gets hurt. Adam Pelech's back. Scott Mayfield's hurt. He doesn't come back. Tony DeAngelo game-winning goal, but before that, the Islanders blow a lead. Matt Barzal gets hit with a puck. He's on a 5-on-6 situation, something that Islander fans are like, why don't they try him? It's killing penalties and 5-on-6. Well, now we know why we should never do that again, because it's the hockey gods won't allow that. Hits in the knee. It's announced that Skarrick's going to start next. The PK again is perfect. And I think Kyle Palmieri scores on his birthday. Then it's the Florida game. So that all is just a kind of 30,000 foot view of what has happened in these past few weeks. And you now have to, and like I said, I should have noted during that, the Islanders won 7 games in a row to fight themselves back into the playoff race. And at the very tail end of that 7th win, the Islanders were smited.
Yep.
Absolutely smited by the hockey gods. And you said it in our last episode that it really does feel like the hockey gods and Lou are in this crazy battle.
Yeah. Because
Lou is essentially his own. He's like a demigod.
I was just gonna say that he's like a demigod.
Yeah, it's like it's like Maui from Moana,
right?
And he's going at it. He's shape shifting. He's picking up defensemen left and right. He's created this junkyard blue line, the junkyard dogs, and I forgot to mention that Paul Maurice paid the Islanders a great compliment at the end. That Panthers game, Skarrick, whatever, Gatcomb scores again. But anyways, so all this happens, and it really does feel like there are messages being sent, and none of us have any control over this, which is normal. Like, you don't have control over your sports team.
Yeah,
I get that, but you kind of know the path that they're going down, and we're all on this path, and like they're throwing plagues at us, and we're just like continuing to go, trying to find shelter in some taverns or whatever along the way. But it's I can't make any sense of any of this. Scott Perunovich is on the team. Who knows? Like, they're going to probably add some bodies to the team again this week. It's who's going to be on the New York Islanders in 24 hours? You can't even answer that question.
Yeah. I mean, it's just been crazy. And the funny thing is, all that 7-game win streak, picking up those guys, losing those guys, winning all those games, has left the Islanders 4 points out of the final playoff spot in the East, which is much better than they started out as. But the Red Wings won. There was one of those games that you mentioned, and that was a beautiful recitation, by the way, of the last week and a half of Islanders hockey. There was one game where they won and everybody basically lost, and that helped them like really jump over a couple of teams. And they fought their way back into it, and some people were starting to notice. But some people were also starting to notice and were like, why are they doing this? In fact, one writer at the Hockey News, who shall remain nameless, called it a disastrous 7-game winning streak and said he felt bad for Islanders fans. Dude, and we're going to talk about this, I'm sure, later. Like, we have all felt this push and pull of like, for the long-term benefit of the team, they probably should trade guys, recoup some assets and look towards the future. But also, damn, winning 7 games in a row feels good. Like, nobody's going to turn that down. So, like, the argument makes a lot of sense, but you can't say the words disastrous 7-game winning streak with a straight face and think that you're going to be taken seriously. Like, come on.
It's
like, there's a better way to make that argument and not come off like a huge douchebag. And this person chose not to do that. But what's crazy is that they did all of this in the span of a week. By the way, Ilya Sorokin, who you mentioned before, was named the first star of the week, which I can't remember the last time that happened for an Islander, because he had the one shutout and obviously the 2 other wins. So, like, on one hand, this was one of the most exciting weeks we've seen this team have in the last couple of years. Obviously, they made those big runs the last 2 years, and this was right up there with all of them. But it came at such a heavy cost, like you said before. I mean, Barzal, Pulock, Dobson, Mayfield, Hogberg, like all of these guys, it's enough already. I can't, who else? There's nobody left to call up. There's nobody left on waivers. Like, you can't replace a Matt Barzal with a guy off waivers. Like, it's just not going to work.
Bridgeport is also going through like not just a terrible season, but there's nobody healthy in Bridgeport either.
That's it's just, and Skarrick, and I mean, we don't need to go through each of these games individually, but like, that game against the Panthers, listen, I don't think anybody was really asking for a win. They gave it as good a run as they possibly could, an A for effort type of situation. Like you said, that lead that they had for 15 minutes in that game, they were the better team. For 15 minutes in that second period, the Islanders were outplaying and outworking the defending Stanley Cup champions with a roster that was literally made up 1/3 of like dudes who were off the street, who were not part of the Islanders 2 weeks ago. And they played really well until that last 5 minutes when the Panthers showed up and they just took the game over. And then that third period, the Islanders apparently had 6 high-danger chances, according to Natural Stat Trick. I can't remember any of them. They had a bunch of shots. They had a lot of shots, but nothing seemed to be all that dangerous. But again, by that point, I think the writing was more or less on the wall. But at the same time, it was coming off a 7-game winning streak. Winning in Tampa Bay was enormous. That play by DeAngelo was crazy. And as I texted you, well, actually, the play by Horvat to draw the defender to behind their own net and then hit DeAngelo with like a 150-foot pass straight up the middle. And then the finish was spectacular. And I texted to you, where's this play been for 3 years? Like, we've been watching this team lose how many overtime games over the last 3 years? Why couldn't we just do this all that time? I don't understand. Why are we waiting now? Why did the guy who unleashed that play be Tony DeAngelo? Like, why couldn't that have been anybody else? Right. But they did it and it worked. And so, you can't give him too much grief for that loss to the Panthers. Skarek, did he play great? No. Did he have a lot of help? No. Definitely did not. They were playing like assholes for the most part in the first period, which was an odd choice to be sure. But I mean, the kid got thrown in there into the fire. Like, what are you supposed to do? So, it was as good a week as you could have expected from the Islanders, from this Islanders team, as they just lost player after player after player after player, and it's exhausting. It really is. It's really exhausting.
It's not fair. That's right. What it is, right? Yeah. And I know sports aren't fair, but this is getting into a different level of entirely. Like, yeah, it's when that puck hit Barzal in the leg. I don't know if you were paying attention to the broadcast or at the time, but Butchie goes, "Oh, that's just an owie. He'll just feel that for 15 seconds and be right back." And as soon as he said that, as soon as those words left his mouth, Barzal, who was putting some pressure on his leg at the time, which made me think, okay, he's okay, kind of crumpled. I was like, great. Yeah, that's good. Because that's what it's been. It's not been Islanders versus opponents this season. It's really been Islanders versus some sort of force, some ethereal force out there. The hockey gods, we talk about them quite a bit. Like, they're out there in full force trying to stop this team. They are throwing the kitchen sink at Lou Lamoriello and the New York Islanders this season in a way I've never. We watched a season where the entire team got COVID. Paul LeDoux was on the roster to open UBS Arena, and even that season made more sense in like how things were falling apart at the seams, because the world was in a different state.
Exactly. I was going to say the whole world was like that at that point. Yeah.
This time it's not. It's this is a completely different scenario where the Islanders are getting plucked one by one. It's one of those scenes in like Saving Private Ryan or a war movie where they're they're kind of battened down in some urban area, and there's like a sniper out there, and they're all like running across. They're like, you go that way, and one by one, like, they're just getting picked off, and I can't wrap my head around it. Usually I can sort of get there, but then you realize who's at the helm of this team, and it's Lou Lamoriello, who, like I said before, is sort of his own demigod like presence, even in the way he just runs the team and the communication of the team. And like, let's be honest, Lou is 82 years old. He's 82. Lou is not going to give up on a season like this, because this could be it for him in terms of running a team. He's 82. There's such a thing as mortality and knowing and like needing to retire and all that stuff. He's 82 years old, and he is taking on these hockey gods, and he picks up Tony DeAngelo, and they smite the Islanders with Noah Dobson. He picks up Tony DeAngelo. Then they take like Marcus Hogberg. Oh, you guys got attached to this guy, the big hog. We'll take him. Then they have Jason Blake's son, Slewfoot, Ryan Pollock. Yeah. And like and he's like, okay, well, I'll have to get Scott Perunovich then. And I'm like, okay, you're gonna have you take Perunovich. Then we'll take Mayfield and Barzal. Yeah. And that'll stop you. And then he gets Boquist and Perunovich, whatever it is. You get the point. And this is you're really not taking on. Look at the Eastern Conference wild card race. the Islanders' opponents right now are not the Detroit Red Wings and the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Boston Bruins and the Rangers. The Islanders' opponents right now are the hockey gods, like
Yeah.
the those guys in Lord of the Rings, those horsemen guys.
Well, that's the Nazgul. They're
The
not
Nazgul.
gods. They're just sort of like messengers.
That-
What I'm
That's
picturing.
what it feels like.
Oh, definitely. But what I'm picturing is, well, before Lord of the Rings was out, we had Clash of the Titans, the last movie by the great Ray Harryhausen. And as you were talking about that, picking off these guys one by one, I pictured Laurence Olivier as Zeus picking up these chess pieces out of this big chessboard he has and just like breaking them. And but Lou Lamoriello in this case is Harry Hamlin, who's like, trying to fight him off with like, oh, I'm getting a gold sword now. Oh, I got a golden fleece now. Oh, I got a robot owl for some reason. Like this is, these are the crew he's putting together to try and fight back Zeus and Poseidon and all these guys that are coming after him. That's what I'm picturing. I never thought I would say that, but that's what I'm
But it
picturing.
is, because it feels like a quest movie. It feels like we're in that part of the quest where, oh my God, they just got through the one arduous part, and the lighting comes a little brighter.
Right.
Everyone's smiling. Maybe our heroes are taking a break and having a snack like under a roof for the first time in weeks, and then all of a sudden, like a knock at the door, and here's a Nazgul or Zeus is breaking a chess piece, and like, oh, yep. By the way, this is a 7-hour trilogy, so you better get ready for another 5 hours of this shit.
Yeah.
And it's a lot to take in, and the crummy part of all of this is we should be here talking about this team winning 7 in a row at one point, and whatever they were, they've won like 10 of 13, and they have truly fought themselves back into the mix. They're playing well. They're good players were playing well. Sorokin looks well and truly back again. There was so much to love. I mean, even the Panthers game, like we said, even at the end of that, like the words that Paul Maurice paid. I mean, if Paul Maurice said what he said about the New York Islanders, about the Toronto Maple Leafs, there would be a bank holiday tomorrow in Canada, right? Or today, Monday, there would have been a bank holiday.
For those who missed it, by the way, Maurice, before he started his post game thing, immediately called out the Islanders for coming out and sitting on the bench during Dmitry Kulikov's 1,000th game ceremony that they did before the game, and he was like, most teams would just stay in the locker room, and that's their right. They have the choice; they can do that, and that's what most teams would do. But it's an incredibly classy display, and it shows a huge amount of respect that the Islanders have for that accomplishment. I mean, 1,000 games is no joke, right? And so for them to come out and watch that ceremony really meant a lot to Maurice, and you should seek it out if you haven't read it, because it's very good. Yeah.
The quote tells you that like Paul Maurice pays attention to the Islanders more than the guy who wrote that they're on a disastrous 7-game winning streak, right? Like he's like, yeah, they've got a lot of bodies out. They just plucked they plucked one of our players that we fired on, and he's now on their junkyard blue line. Like it's Paul Maurice understands what the Islanders were going through and what our Islander fans are going through right now. I mean, it really should be a week where we're really celebrating being back in it, and the fact that the rest of the season might have some meaning to it, and that instead I'm trying just to make sense with how this is happening, how you're trained as a sports fan to think that when a player gets hurt in like one portion of the season, especially as an important player like Matt Barzal, who's out for a long time, that when he comes back, you're like, okay, well, he did his injury time this season. He's good now. And that's just not how it works with this team. And you think back to like last year and when they lost 3 defensemen in the same game, you're like, well, that's a once in a lifetime thing that you'll see. They lose 3 or whatever, 2D in like the first 2 minutes of a game. And you're like, oh, that'll never happen again. And it's happened like 3 times this season already. Like it's
right. What
else can these hockey gods throw at us? And in a weird way, it's galvanized me as a fan. Like I'm back into the corner with these guys. I'm in the foxhole with Brock Nelson. I'm in the foxhole with Max Siplikov and my boys, who I despised a month ago. I was like, you guys are wasting my time. I apologize for all I said, because you guys are being put through the ringer right now, and we're right there with you. And they've got 3 huge games coming up this week, and I'm not hopeful for the result, but it really does feel like we're, the the calls come from high command and they're like, listen, guys, the enemy's coming. There's no reinforcements coming. You're going to have to hold the line for as long as you possibly can for us to just get to that international break, just to the last man standing. Like, that's where we're at in the season. We're at the Battle of Dunkirk, and we just got the call that hey, no help's coming, boys. You just got to hold them off as long as we can to get to the Four Nations face-off. And
Right.
if you could do that, then possibly we get to Lord of the Rings 3. And there's some hope at the end of the tunnel.
Right. I mean, they've got 30 games left. They've played 52 and they've got 30 games, and it's going to be quite a run, but things could come to an end a lot sooner than that. But it's funny that you mention how a month ago we were ready to throw all of these guys overboard.
Yeah,
And I
hated
don't-
them all.
Yeah. And I think we were justified in that because the first 2 months of the season, the first half of the season was really no fun. It was just a slog. I mean, remember, before they won 7 games in a row, they had only won 2 games in a row twice in this season. Twice they had won 2 games in a row, back-to-back games. And once they had won 3 games in a row. So if you were of the belief that this team couldn't win 7 games in a row, you were 100% justified because you had not seen anything even almost approaching that number. And then they pulled it off. And I'm looking at them in the standings right now. And it's funny because if you woke up today, right, you went to sleep in October and woke up today and were like, hey, what's going on over in the NHL? You would look at the Islanders record and you'd be like, 52 games. They're 24, 21, and 7. All right. They're over NHL 500. They've got a -7 goal differential. That's not that bad. There's, the team ahead of them, the Boston Bruins, geez, they got a -26 goal differential. And the Red Wings, who are in the 7th spot right now, have a -9. So that's not that bad. They're 12, 11, and 2 at home. A couple of too many losses, but at least they're over 500. And they're 12, 10, and 5 on the road, which, is pretty normal, I think. A normal road record. If you're 500 on the road, that's pretty darn good. Like, these are all sort of very normal numbers, but to have gotten to these numbers took an incredibly amount of abnormal events that are still going on, that they're still dealing with right now. Again, we've been talking about this whole time. Barzal, Mayfield. Mayfield left the Lightning game. That game was so good. That was a real toe-to-toe battle with another really good team. That game was so entertaining that I didn't even realize Mayfield hadn't come back. He just left in the first period. I didn't even know he wasn't back yet. And I texted you, I'm like, is Mayfield still out? He was. They played the entire game with 5D. And then they were down
5D. And at one point, Pelech left that game.
Yes.
And Greg Picker was the one who picked up on this. So at one point, the Islanders had 4 defensemen against the Lightning. 3 out of the 4 were not part of the organization 9 days before that. D'Angelo, Boquist, and Perunovic.
That's just absurd.
But the only one who was an Islander 10 days before that game was Alex Romanov, who's been in and out of the lineup himself. That he morphed into Scott Stevens for a little bit.
Right.
It totally abnormal is right. And we've kind of been joking about how funny it is that Patrick Waugh, like one of the titanic figures of the NHL over the past 40 something years, is the head coach of the New York Islanders. He is talk about a demigod.
Yeah.
Lou is a demigod. Patrick Waugh is whatever is right below that. He's right there. I mean, he's St. Patrick, right? So like there's some magic and mysticism in Patrick Waugh's eyes too.
Right.
And he's behind the bench for the New York Islanders, a team that we know is it deals with shit that you just couldn't make up. And when you try to explain it to other people, they're like, every team goes through that. And you're like, I get that, but have they ever like had to play in 3 different home buildings in the same season and all that? And people just look at it as whiny kind of long suffering fan syndrome. I get it, but now Patrick Waugh is here, and he's been on the total other side of the spectrum on teams that just win. Patrick Waugh just would win all the time. He was really good. He was a winner. His teams were confident. They fed off his confidence and brashness. He punched Chris Osgood in the face. Like this is a absolute winner. And he comes to this team, and you look in his eyes, and you're seeing him realize, holy shit, the New York Islanders. I was not aware of what you have to get through to be a New York Islander.
Yeah.
And he said as much. He said after the game against the Lightning, when Matt Barzal was hit with the puck and Scott Mayfield left, and he said, "I've never been a part of a team that has had so many injuries, and not just minor ones. Guys missing for a long period of time since the start of the year. It's incredible, but the group is resilient. The group doesn't look for excuses." And I was really happy. I was first upset that he said that, because I thought that was pretty much, you don't have to be an insider to know that he's saying, yeah, Matt Barzal is really hurt in the locker room when he's saying that. But I was also happy that Patrick Roy is the one saying this. So if Patrick Roy is a guy who's seen it all in the NHL from a winning perspective, is seeing what's going on, he's probably going to bed at night thinking, holy shit, man, if we can make the playoffs with what is happening, this is like one of the biggest accomplishments of my career, me being Patrick Roy, who's one of the best goaltenders and most important hockey players of all time. Like, this is something he's never seen before, and if he can lead this team to the playoffs, it would resonate with him. That's where we're at now. We're at like totally uncharted waters for a guy who has been around the world. So I don't know,
because he's played for two charmed teams, one obviously being the Montreal Canadiens and the other being the Colorado Avalanche, which is funny because the year before Patrick Roy played for the Colorado Avalanche, the Colorado Avalanche were the Quebec Nordiques, who were anything but charmed. And all of a sudden that move from Quebec City to Denver changed everything. And really what it did was it opened up the door to acquire Patrick Roy, because let me tell you right now, had the Avalanche still been in Quebec City, there's no way the Canadiens would have traded Patrick Roy there, believe me. But he was across the country in another conference, so why not trade Patrick Roy over there? And that changed everything. And he's seeing now the other side of that coin. When you don't play for a charmed franchise, when you don't play for one that has enough goodwill with the hockey gods to make up for it. The Islanders' luck with the hockey gods ran out a long time ago, as you all know. But that is a good segue, though, to talk about really the one game we haven't really gotten into, which is that 5-2 win over the Avalanche on Tuesday, which was maybe their best game of the week, including the shutout and the overtime game against the Lightning. This was the kind of game where the Avalanche dominated for long stretches, but somehow the Islanders just made it work and stuck in there, and they blocked a lot of shots, and they got a little bit of luck with what's his name? Manson's goal got waved off. I forgot his first name. I don't really care. Perunovich gets his first point as an Islander, with a dump in, and Lee finding Horvat for making 3-1. They made it 3-2 with a Jack Drury off the bench, catching him on a bad line change. But then Alex Romanov, again, who's become Islanders' Scott Stevens, scores from distance, and then Simon Holmstrom made what might be my favorite play of the whole year, and it was on an empty net goal, when he held off Cale Makar with one arm and then scored into an empty net. Like, that is like king shit, right? Like, that's just you could see, if there was a poster of that play, I would love to own it. And it doesn't matter to me that there was no goalie in the net. I don't care.
No, I want that in the poster.
Like, empty net goals aren't supposed to be exciting. They're not supposed to be like monumental events. This was a monumental event, and I wasn't at the game, obviously, but I could feel people kind of being like, holy shit, did we just see what we saw? Simon Holmstrom holding off. And Makar was like, I don't know, he was arguing something. Maybe he held him or whatever, but it was all for naught. At that point, the Islanders had won. But it was sloppy, but again, you give them an A for effort. And that game, the thing about this week of games was that they were all, in a way, really improbable wins. I mean, we sat here and said there's no way they beat the Columbus Blue Jackets in that game because they were playing so poorly, even though they had beaten the Sharks the night before. I mean, come on, it's the Sharks. There's no way they beat the Blue Jackets, and they did. And then, they got a back-to-back. I mean, come on, they're going to lose probably one, if not both of those games, but they won them both, including the one against the Hurricanes. And then it was like, there's no way they beat the Avalanche. They're all energized now. They did. Oh, I mean, you can't possibly think they're going to win in Philly. I mean, that's a tough one. The Flyers are still gunning for that same spot. They did. Oh, they got back-to-back in Florida. That's 2 losses. That's been historically back-to-back losses for the Islanders for how many years now? But they won. Again, they went toe-to-toe with the Lightning. That was a heck of a game before, losing that game to the Panthers for a number of reasons. So this has all just been so improbable. Even the good stuff has been improbable. And then you've
Right.
got the bad stuff that's also improbable. Like, how could one team
Right.
lose this many guys in this short a period of time?
The good stuff is genuinely sports feel good shit.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it's like the stuff that a team of destiny picks up along the way. Mark Gatcomb is the poster
Oh my
child
God.
for it.
This
Like,
guy.
this guy is unbelievable. He's flying into other players. He's putting them
Yeah.
he's completely reinvigorated that bottom six. The bottom six has been the bane of our existence
my God.
all season long. In comes this baby-faced guy from Woburn, Massachusetts. His parents in the stand with the thick Boston accent. And he comes and he just starts crashing guys into the glass. And the rest of the team was like, looked around and we're like, oh, I guess I should do that too. This guy is doing it. I can't let Mark Gatcomb come here and we can't leave him to be the only guy to do this. And they picked up their boy. Like, Casey Cizikas has turned the clock back and he looks like Mark Gatcomb. He looks like prime Mark Gatcomb now. Casey Cizikas out of nowhere is playing good hockey. So, like you talked about Holmstrom. Holmstrom looks like a man possessed. He's got I don't know what he's going to become, but he's a very unique hockey player. In my eyes, he's awesome this season. The big dogs at top have been great. Anders Lee continues to score, and you talked about that Scott Perunovich play. That was my favorite play of the season until the Holmstrom play, because I was like, he gets the puck and you could tell he's like, I should probably sift this one to the net. You'll get pucks on net. And he's like, it might get blocked. And I've seen Noah Dobson take that shot a million times. I look at it as like a Bruno Gervais special. It's got about a 1 in 10 chance of getting through the first shin pad. And there's like 8 other shin pads to go if it gets on net. And if it does, great. The goalie's not going to pick it up, but it's not going to get through. And instead of doing that, he dumps it behind the net, and he is rewarded by the fundamentals gods and the hockey IQ gods give him a bone and picks up his first point. But it's Perunovich playing well. Like even D'Angelo playing well, like having some sort of redemption arc or whatever. It's Boquist. It comes out of nowhere. He scores a goal in his first game back with the Islanders.
Beautiful goal. Yeah.
And then, like I said, Gatcomb is playing well. Kyle McLean's picked his shit up. They're killing penalties.
Right.
Like their penalty kill is 90% in January.
92% in January.
Crazy. Like this is genuinely feel good shit. Like deserve stuff that we deserve to see because of what we sat through in October and November and December. It felt like almost a reward. But the stuff that was happening, the bad shit that was happening, was completely undeserved. It wasn't like the Islanders were playing poorly and getting lucky and winning. They were playing the right way, and they were doing it with guys who are, I keep calling them the junkyard dogs because that's what they are. They are a scrap heap island of misfit toys junkyard dog team right now. A team that and when that team's going and they're winning games, you'll fall in love with them. Hell, you'll fall in love with them even if they're not winning games. Yeah. We've done that before, right? We've watched some guys who were junkyard dogs play for the Islanders at the beginning of the the 2010s and the end of the aughts, and we still talk about them to this day. Like we shouldn't be talking about them, but we do. And Matthew Spiller types, like these guys are, but they're winning games with this roster. It's feel good, and you would expect that they'd get like a little bit of a push from the hockey gods for doing things the right way, for coming out to sit on the bench for Dmitry Kulikov of all fucking people's 1000th game. Like that's karma that should be repaid to us. And instead, this kind of stuff for doing the right thing, the Islanders are getting smited in bizarre ways. Former sons of former players are taking out defensemen. Matt Barzal's first ever shot block breaks his leg. Like, what the hell is going on? Yeah. What did any one of us do to deserve this? Yeah. And at the same time, fucking bring it on. Like, let's go. I want to keep going. I can't wait for the game on Tuesday and Thursday or whatever they play the Jets. They do the little Northern Plains two-step against the Jets in the Wild. I want to watch this team now. I want to. I'm behind them. I think that it's not going to be a boisterous crowd on Tuesday night at UBS, right? Like it's a Tuesday night. Vegas is in town. It's game 53 of a season. But I can't be there, but I would love for it just to be a really big atmosphere, a big win, because this team deserves to have its season still alive going into the stupid international break. They deserve it. But that doesn't mean that means bupkis. It just means bupkis.
Yeah.
So hopefully things go their way, but I'm expecting more hailstorms just be thrown at us and lightning bolts and chess pieces. It's exhausting.
It is, and it just makes that predicament that they're in that much harder. Like you said, they have earned back a lot of my trust and my interest, but there's something about the situation that they're in that, still calls for maybe, trading some of these players, or, kind of not so much calling it a season, but thinking more towards the long-term health of the franchise rather than a playoff berth. But then a funny thing that happened is, like, all this time we've been saying, like, yeah, they're not too far out of the playoffs, but even if they make the playoffs, then what happens? Well, now I'm looking at the Devils, who are struggling, the Hurricanes, who they've beaten twice, Capitals, who show some signs that maybe underneath the hood they're not quite as good as they look like they might be. The Leafs, who, of course, their nemesis been the playoffs for years now. The Bruins or Senators, who are there too. I mean, again, we're inching towards a Senators Leafs playoff series, and if that happens, I would be very, very afraid if I was the Maple Leafs, because the Senators have every reason in the world to beat the pants off of them. Suddenly, I'm looking at an Islanders team that won 7 games in a row, and a bunch of teams at the top of the Metro Division that can be got. And I'm thinking, you know what? If they make the playoffs, they might be dangerous, which is like a 180-degree turn from where we were a month and a half ago. Like, it's crazy. So
because the calculus around it has changed, right? A month and a half ago, the argument for the Islanders making the playoffs was, the other teams around them are just going to fall apart, and maybe they can, like, luck their way into it. But that's not what's happened. What's happened is all these the wild card races, everyone got hot, including the Islanders, kind of at the same time, save for like the Bruins and the Canadiens have fallen apart, and the Penguins, who we'll talk about later, and the Flyers. But like the Red Wings, the Blue Jackets, the Islanders, even the Rangers started to string wins together. The Senators climbed into third. So all of a sudden it required the Islanders to remain in the race to play good hockey. And they've done that, and they've done it without Ryan Pulock, Noah Dobson, now Matt Barzal, Simeon Varlamov, Marcus Hogberg, JG Pageau for a game, Anthony Duclair for a game. Duclair's, it's completely glossed over now that Duclair has missed like 20 games, came back, played well for a few, but is clearly playing at like 60%.
He's hampered.
Yeah,
clearly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Romanov was in and out of the lineup. It's like Dennis Cholowski is, I think, maybe leading the blue line in points for this team, and he's a regular healthy scratch when the team isn't being smited by lightning bolts. This is so the fact that they've been able to stay in the race despite going through this Mordor situation, trying to get the ring into the freaking volcano, tells you that if they pick their head up in April and they're in the playoffs, why can't they cause some upsets? Trust me, playing Washington or Carolina in a best-of-7 series is going to be a lot less difficult than watching Matt Barzal and Scott Mayfield go down and needing to pick up Adam Boquist, and they've been through the ringer already, so they're not going to be afraid or overwhelmed by any sort of adversity in a playoff situation. So they'll have every reason to believe, and as a fan base, if this team can limp over the line, can hold the line, and get reinforcements to make the playoffs, like you're going to be so damn proud of this team. There's going to be a kind of like a galvanizing intangible force around them, and that's really dangerous to do, to go into the playoffs with that when you're playing well, and the Islanders will have to be required to be playing well if they do. So. Right. I mean, you might go into if the Islanders make the playoffs, they might game. And I said it last episode, right? Like, I joked about it that Tony DeAngelo might be the longest tenured Islander on the blue line by game 82.
We're trending in that direction.
I think it's more likely than not that is the case at this point. So like, we could be going into game 1 against the Capitals or the Hurricanes or whoever, and number 1 defenseman is Tony DeAngelo, and like number 2 defenseman is Cal Delius or something, and it's gonna be it's a Darren Quint situation might arise. This is we're prepared for it because we've already seen the worst of it. Like when you've already stared into the abyss. I know this has gotten long, but I feel like that's been this team's superpower for 3 seasons now, is that they'll drag you to the abyss. They'll drag you to the edge of the cliff. They'll make you stare into nothingness and bleakness and darkness, and they'll push you to the edge of the cliff, and they'll put 2 hands on your back, and they'll make you feel like they're about to push you into this abyss, and then they pull you back. Like, if you've already stared into that abyss, the fucking Washington Capitals or Carolina Hurricanes won't be that scary. And we've seen the abyss. Like, I've seen it. I watched Matt Barzal go down. I saw Patrick Roy after the game and knew for hours before it was announced that Matt Barzal was indefinitely out. So it's just not that. I mean, Mike Riley has got a concussion that saved his life.
Right.
This is what we've dealt with already. That's normal. That's easy. That's easy work. Maybe they don't win, but it's much easier than what we're dealing with here in February and January.
Yeah. And here's the other funny thing, and this front half is going a little long, but that's okay. Here's the other funny thing. We're talking about this now. We've been going on for this about almost an hour. Any other Islanders podcast you're going to listen to is going to talk about this. Has anybody else anywhere even almost broached the subject of, wow, these guys have a lot of people hurt? Like, everybody laughed when they picked up DeAngelo for obvious reasons. Everybody thought it was funny when they traded for Perunovich a day later. Some people noticed that they picked up Boquist on waivers. Shout out, by the way, to the Skates at the Stakes guys for calling that a day ahead of time. I listened to the podcast. They're like, I feel like they might. I forget if it was AJ or Jake was like, I think they might pick up Boquist. And I was like, I don't know about that. And then they did. So good on you guys for pointing that out. Nobody seems to have noticed why.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, because everybody's hurt. They're either second or third in the league right now in man games lost, and it's just like, people, again, when they announced Varlamov, people are like, oh, he hadn't been playing. No, he hadn't been playing. We hadn't seen him in 2 months. Like,
Marcus Hogberg has been playing, and he's also hurt.
Yeah,
and he was a fun story for a little bit, but nobody picked up on.
So it's just funny that this is our story, and like you said, it will galvanize the team because here comes Mark Gatcomb, who, by the way, I've decided to start calling the Comer. This is my. We have the Big Sipper. And now we have the Comer. I'm calling him that. I don't care what anybody says.
I love him.
He also looks like an actor named David. How do you pronounce his name? Oh, yeah. David Dastmalchian. He's the guy. He was in Ant-Man. He was in Late Night with the Devil. He was in Suicide Squad. He played Polka Dot Man. If you've seen the Suicide Squad, you know his face.
Oh, yeah. He does look like this guy. Yeah. He does. Yeah.
He just looks just like him.
God.
But yeah, it's been. This has been one of the most exhausting seasons we've seen, and we've seen some very exhausting seasons, and and it's not over. There's still 30 games.
There's 30 games left. There's 30 games left. Like that brings with it a whole other set of problems. I mean, yeah, UBS Arena is gonna like sink into the earth or something like that. Get swallowed up in a, like a cesspit or whatever. And I think it's like, even just saying the name Mark Gatcomb, right? If Mark Gatcomb was a Toronto Maple Leaf or a New York Ranger.
Oh my God.
This guy would get 10 minutes a night on Hockey Night in Canada and all sorts of stuff. And
Larry Brooks would be like, why are they not playing Mark Gatcomb more?
right. We would know who Mark Gatcomb is if he played for other teams in bigger markets. And the other thing you're going to have to prepare yourself for and is that nobody's going to look at the Islanders as a feel-good story, despite if they do continue playing this way, right? Nobody's going to look at them like a feel-good story at all.
Right.
Despite the fact that this is now clearly going to be a feel-good story if they make the playoffs, and a shame if they don't. But because of who they're playing, who they're going up against, and I don't blame anyone from like a neutral fan perspective for being like, I'd much rather see the Red Wings get in, or dealing with what the Blue Jackets have dealt with. The Blue Jackets becoming like the everyone's pet team in the playoff race, and the Senators obviously long suffering, but. Even like juxtaposed against the Bruins and the Rangers and the Lightning, nobody's going to look at the Islanders and say, well, those are the feel good scrappy guys. No, like they'll be like, I don't want to see Mark Gatcomb in the playoffs again, despite the fact that like this guy is a great story. And it's just, so prepare yourself for that. We are the New York Islanders. They play on an island. The island is on their logo. And that's just where we are too. Like nobody's going to reach out to the island. Nobody's going to find out what's going on the island. They're going to parachute in, make fun of it, and then get the hell out. LOL Lou, disastrous 7-game winning streak, that kind of shit is not going to go away.
Right.
They're not going to get the pats on the back or anything like that. And it's so we're on our own. We are totally on our own, but we're on our own in the foxhole with guys like Mark Gatcomb, and who else would you rather be in a fucking foxhole with right now?
Mark Gatcomb. Right.
Mark Gatcomb.
All right. Well, we are going to take a breath, take a break, come back and look at those 3 games that are coming up. I forgot to mention it before, but sign up at patreon.com/IslandersAnxiety. You guys know the drill. If you want to hear this show without ads, like actual ads from people like Pitney Bowes, sign up at the Patreon, and for $5 a month, you won't have to hear any ads. But that's a story for another time. So we'll be back on the other side. We're going to talk about the upcoming schedule, and we are going to get into some Master Pens Theater, which was teased last week. So hold on to your butts. Thanks. And now a word from our sponsors. First is always VintageIceHockey.com, where you can get t-shirts, hoodies, jerseys, and more featuring over 100 classic hockey logos. Vintage Ice Hockey now carries a full line of Islanders Anxiety merch featuring our blue and orange brain logo, as well as our Al Arbor and the Island shirts. And as always, our portion of the sales go directly to the Center for Dementia Research. That is VintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. They offer a Rosé, a Pinot Grigio, and a Pinot Noir that was named a Top 100 Best Buy by Wine Enthusiast magazine. All are delicious, priced at less than $15 a bottle, and available at local wine shops and at UBS Arena. Learn more at thepinotproject.com. Please drink responsibly.
Love, exciting and new. Hello, Hannah Waddingham here. Have you seen the fabulous new Sun Princess? World-class entertainment, exceptional dining, and the greatest pizza ever. It's
Don't miss our Come Aboard sale with up to 40% off and free room upgrades. Visit princess.com or call your travel advisor to book. Princess Cruises. Terms and restrictions apply. Offer ends 2/28/25. Ships at Bermudan and British Registry.
So, the Islanders have 3 games coming up this week before the Four Nations face-off, which takes up the next 2 weeks after that. Tuesday night, the night you're listening to this, they are at home against the Vegas Golden Knights. It's a 7:30 start. And then, as Mike said, they're off to the Midwest to take on the Winnipeg Jets on Friday and the Minnesota Wild on Saturday. And both of those are 8 o'clock starts. None of these games are going to be easy. These are 3 really good teams. We'll get to the Wild in a minute. Who are going through their own injury problems. Mainly, I don't know if it's so much volume, but you know, when you have one great player and he's hurt, might as well be 10 different guys. The Golden Knights, the Islanders obviously already shut out in Vegas, but they've picked up Brandon Saad since then. They've also picked up somebody. Oh no, that was Dallas. And you know, they're still going to be pretty good. So that's not going to be an easy game by any stretch of the imagination. And playing in Winnipeg against a team that has led the NHL in points for most of the season, also not going to be easy. The Wild are the easiest team on this schedule, but you know, the Islanders, I'm pretty sure, haven't won in the state of Minnesota since the 1981 Stanley Cup Final, which was a different team in a different city in a different building. So that isn't really all that relevant. I can't remember the last time they beat the Wild in St. Paul. To be blunt, I can't. Usually, it's kind of a house of horrors for them. But I will say this: of these 3 games, if they take 2 of them, and what's nice is that they're all Western Conference opponents. So if they win in overtime or a shootout or something, that's totally okay. If they take 2 points from each of 2 of these games, then the season is still on. If they take 1 point, you know, I guess it's kind of on life support a little bit. If they lose all 3 of these games, particularly if they lose them in regulation, and again, I don't think I'm being, you know, hyperbolic or pessimistic when I say that they could potentially do that, because these are 3 really tough games. I think it's going to be a long 2 weeks for Lou Lamoriello as he watches Brock Nelson play for Team USA, the Four Nations face-off, because that's when the precarious position gets even more precarious, and we start hanging on by fingernails, and the calls to make some trades ahead of the March 7th trade deadline are going to get louder and louder. What do you think of these 3 games coming up? Again, this is just about the 3 of the worst opponents you could possibly see in a short time span. And I'm sure all these dudes have, flights booked to Jamaica or the Virgin Islands or Cancun or wherever it is they're going with their families. Not you, Brock Nelson. you've got games to play. But I'm serious. If they take 2 of these games, that's hugely impressive, and would keep their season alive for the most part.
Yeah, I'm looking at it as this way. Like this, if this team can find a way to scrap together 3 points,
Yeah.
I would go so far as to say, like, not only is the season alive, but this thing is well and truly on, because that would keep them at 3 games above NHL 500. You're imagining to get into the playoffs right now. It's the Blue Jackets and the Red Wings. They're both 6 over. The Lightning are 7 over. I think if you're looking at maybe 90. I would say I would want 92 points to be safe, right? So there's 30 games left. You got to get 40 or whatever, 30 games left. You got to get 37 points out of, or 27 points, excuse me, whatever it is, the math, 37 points out of 30 games. If you can collect 3 of them from these games, considering the situation that you're in, I think that they're gonna be right there. And I don't. I've told myself so many times this season I wouldn't get sucked back in to this team and not believe that they're just screwing with our emotions. That situation last year when they won 6 in a row and then they lost to the Kings, and we're like, whatever. You lose a game every once in a while, it happens, and then they lost 7 in a row to end their season for the 15th time before resurrecting it again. That's in the back of my head here. It is like I was worried that after that Florida game, despite them playing well, it's like, man, I don't know. Like, they might not win a game for a long time. And it might not be their fault. It's just because there's 3 games left before a 2-week break. So you could be looking at a 3 weeks between wins already if they don't pick up one during this week.
Right.
And that would just be killer because they don't deserve it. They deserve to go into this break still in this thing. And I hope that the way that they've come together and circled the wagons over the past few weeks, despite all these injuries and players going down and new faces showing up that they've never seen before to play hockey games, and Mark Gatcomb coming into the lineup, like you'd hope that they're not at risk of, like you said, having the flights booked syndrome. Like a team like Toronto or Florida, teams that
way
are
out in front.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of team, yeah. Washington. You'd hope that they're looking at these 3 games as an opportunity, and maybe they can pick off a team like Winnipeg that is, those guys are in Winnipeg the whole season. They can't wait to get to Turks and Caicos or whatever. Maybe they can catch them in that situation. I don't have my hopes. I like you said, the Wild are kind of like the Nashville Predators in my mind. The Islanders, I don't think, have beaten Minnesota since 2019. I want to say.
Wow. I can't believe it's that recent.
Yeah, it looks like, looking here, it looks like the Islanders have won. The Wild have won 6 in a row against the Islanders and are 9-3 in their last 12 overall. So you are right that this team doesn't really beat Minnesota. But if they can find a way to scrap together 3 points, man, this team would really make a believer out of me.
Yeah.
So you hope that maybe they can get it done. I mean, they've got the one thing they do have right now is they've got a goalie in a really good goalie in fantastic form. So maybe Sorokin can steal them a point or 2, and then they can go earn another 1 or 2 somewhere else. But yeah, I'm not looking. I'm not hopeful for it, but I'll be there and in the trenches with these guys because they deserve that support right now.
It's in case you're wondering, well, who do they play after the Four Nations face off? Well, I'll tell you right now. It's Dallas, the Rangers, and the Bruins.
Right.
Right off the bat to end February. And then, there are those Predators there on Saturday. So March 1st. So February is a short schedule, but it's a tough schedule. And so, if the Islanders again want to, a lot of this too, and it gets back to what we were joking about before, the disastrous 7-game winning streak. It's like, which is never not going to be funny, by the way. Like these guys, it's one thing for us to say, listen, the Islanders are better off trading Brock Nelson, Palmieri, Pajot, aka whoever, getting draft picks, getting younger players, looking forward, the future of the franchise, getting more prospects in and changing up the face of what's been a pretty stale team for a long time now. That's easy for us to say. We're sitting here, and I'm sure Lou Lamoriello is thinking about it. But the dudes who are on the ice, they're not gonna sit and ponder that question. They want to win games. Like, they're out here trying to win games. They've always been trying to win games. It's never been an effort thing. They just have played like assholes sometimes, and then or they play great and they can't score, or they can't kill a penalty for 3 months. Like, it's not a matter of like effort. It's a matter of, are they good enough? And these guys want to show that they are good enough, and they're going to go out there and try and win games. So like it's and as fans, we want to see them win games. I mean, we've talked about it. I can't root for them to lose. It's not in my DNA. I just can't do it. So even though logically in my head I should be, but I can't do it. So like, these guys are going to go out there and they're going to try and play their best if they can. And again, sometimes they end up playing like assholes. Let's hope that the first period of that Panthers game was the last time we see that asshole team, because win or lose, I still don't want to see those guys again. But shout out, by the way, to a guy on Blue Sky named Michael Clifford, who posts some interesting stats posts and stuff. And he was like, I noticed that Perunovic was a -3 against the Panthers, and he went and looked. Basically, every play that resulted in a goal against that Perunovic was on the ice for was somebody else's fault. I think Pelech had a couple of giveaways, and then somebody else, maybe Romanov, I'm not sure, had a giveaway. So it was like, Perunovic didn't really do anything wrong. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, which I thought was kind of funny. But anyway, hopefully they can play as well as they have and pick up some wins here. And maybe the Winnipeg Jets are looking forward to getting a break. I don't know if they have a game after that too.
No,
I'm
they
assuming
don't. Neither the Wild nor the Jets do. So
really?
Yeah, they're both. The Islanders are
their last game.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe they do catch one of them.
Right.
And then they play well against Vegas or something. Right. But
I think they can beat Vegas. I mean, they've already beaten Vegas.
Yeah, and Vegas is limping in
right.
A little bit, and you just, I mean, just if they can, like I said, 3 points, with this roster and get into that break with 2 weeks, and maybe, who knows, like a couple of the guys that have disappeared come back, and Anthony Duclair can rest. It's just,
right.
It's
yeah,
it's been a lot, and I'm looking forward to the 2 week break.
Yeah, me too.
Not because I don't want to watch this stupid tournament, which it looks like everyone doesn't want to play in anymore, which is great. Oh God, it's been so. There's been nothing that's been making me smile more than seeing the discussions about should players get suspended if they sit out this tournament and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is so good that this is happening, because as we've said from the beginning, like, yeah, there are people out there who are genuine hockey fans who want to see international hockey, and by all means, go for it. If you're excited for this, don't let me rain on your parade. But this tournament was concocted by basically the media, who were like, I want to see
television.
I want to see Connor McDavid play for Team Canada with Sidney Crosby, because I am obsessed with both those guys to an unhealtly extent, and I want to see them play against my other favorite guy, Austin Matthews, in a USA jersey. And wouldn't it be cool to see Willie Stiles and Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews play against each other in a tournament? And these guys have annoyed the leagues enough that they're like, fuck it, fine, you can do it. Here's some stupid made up tournament that we just put together with only 4 teams.
Right. Oh, Russia, you're not invited.
Yeah, Russia's not invited. Germany, sorry. Couple of Slovakia. You guys didn't make the cut for this made up tournament. And it's gonna tank. They were just having trouble selling tickets. But this is gonna be so cool. Best on best. Nobody's gonna watch it. So I'm looking forward to just getting away and collecting myself. And I know that everyone on the Islanders except for Brock Nelson is probably thinking the same thing. Like, get these 3 wins, rejuvenate for a very improbable run.
Yeah. Well, I got good news for you. For most of that 2 weeks, we have a podcast scheduled to record. So
yes,
even if you wanted to watch those games, I'm not sure you'll be able to. But yeah, I love that question. Like, don't you want to see best on best hockey? No, I want my team to be the best. I could give a shit about all the other teams. Right. As long as my team is the best team, I couldn't care less about these other teams, these other countries. I don't care. I want my team to be the best.
There's 4 teams that are each playing each other once. So it's at least 3 games. Just wait until someone gets hurt, like McDavid. And I'd be like, that's just how can we even be okay with this? Like, this is your fault. This is another situation of we're all trying to find the guy who did this.
I've heard a few mentions of, when John Tavares got hurt at Sochi, the Islanders were livid. Yeah, and you guys made fun of them for being livid.
Right.
Like, you guys were raking Garth Snow over the coals for being livid. And they were like, well, why didn't you have a better team, Garth, if you wanted, you didn't want to lose a player to getting injured, injury at the Olympics? What?
Yeah.
What? This is okay now that this team's only good player is hurt? Like, that's fine because they didn't have any other good players that you're justifying that? I remember that. I keep receipts, people. I'm not kidding. I have a very long history of keeping receipts. I know who you are, who said that. So I just, I'm not looking forward to this at all. But like I said, we got plenty of Weird Islanders podcasts to record that week. So we're in good shape. Okay. That being said, that is a perfect segue, though, to bring about a brand new episode, teased last week, of Master Pens Theater. Okay, so when we last left the Pittsburgh Penguins, what were they doing?
It was the Tristan Jarry.
Right, yeah.
The Tristan Jarry saga.
That's right. They had finally waved goodbye to longtime goalie who never should have been signed to that extension, Tristan Jarry. And now things have taken a different turn. The Penguins have, much like the Islanders, kind of hung around. They're behind them right now in the standings, but again, everything is so tight. It's really doesn't mean much of anything. But a big trade went down. It's been a week of huge trades, not just in the NHL, but in the NBA as well, which is hilarious because the NHL was like, hey, look at these guys. We're making trades here. These are pretty notable players. I mean, Mikko Rantanen is one of the better players in the league.
Mikko Rantanen's the Carolina Hurricane now.
Yeah. Look at that. JT Miller. He had 100 points last year. Isn't that a huge trade? He's going to play for the New York Rangers. Isn't that crazy? The NBA is just like, yeah, I think we'll just trade the second or third best Dallas Maverick of all time to the Lakers for one of their better players. And that immediately wiped any NHL trade from the last 5 years off the map, basically. Which I thought was very hilarious. And then the next day, the Chicago Bulls traded half of their team to the rest of the league. So things have continued to stay pretty crazy. But anyway, what you might be asking, what did the Avalanche have trading Mikko Rantanen to Carolina have to do with the Pittsburgh Penguins? Well, that's a great question. And the answer is because it opened up a bit of a hole on the Avalanche at forward, at center in particular. And another thing we know people want, Frege, is not just best on best hockey, but what they want to see, what the hockey watching public wants more than anything else is for the Cole Harbor kids, Nathan MacKinnon and Sidney Crosby, to play on the same team together. And so wouldn't it be fantastic, Elliot, if the Penguins traded Sidney Crosby to the Colorado Avalanche so we could enjoy the magnificence of these two guys playing together? That's my Ron McClain voice, by the way. I don't know. I've been working on it. Hasn't really worked out that well. That was him, by the way, calling them the Cole Harbor kids, which is literally made me almost cringe into another dimension. Like I literally just kind of like almost, folded in on myself. It was so awful. There was like secondhand cringe, third hand cringe. I couldn't take. Ron McClain needs to be stopped. But so there were a lot of people, it wasn't just him, but a few people were like, hey, what about Crosby getting traded to the Avalanche to, kind of replace Rantanen? And that would be kind of a cool spot. The Avalanche have a chance to win a cup. Penguins, generously, respectfully speaking, do not. Wouldn't that be great? Well, you know what happened then. Penguins beat writers, they don't like this. They don't like when you come for their Saint Sidney. They don't like when you make baseless and really offensive and disrespectful trade suggestions involving one Sidney J. Crosby. I don't know, what is his middle name? I forget. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I'm not crazy, right? There were people talking about this. It didn't last long, but there were people talking about this, right? Like, what if Crosby got traded to the Avalanche? It was a topic of conversation for like a couple of hours.
It was a topic of conversation before he signed that extension, too.
Right?
Like, this goes back. It's not like a new thing. Plus, this is hockey media. Like this,
Right.
if you haven't noticed, hockey media has devolved into just being one big rumor mill trade
Yeah.
board throughout the entire year. It's that's all it is now. Nobody writes about anything else except for trades, trade rumors, and next contracts. That's all that there is out there.
Right.
And it whatever, especially if you're a member of the media, you can't really throw stones at glass houses, especially since this person who we're going to talk about has an article. I think his latest article is like the next 5 candidates to be traded from the Penguins. So it is very, very hypocritical here. But I guess there is one player that is just not ever allowed to be on a trade board, even
Right.
if it is pie in the sky to get him reunited with the Cole Harbor Kid. And it's Sidney Crosby. You can look, Wayne Gretzky can get traded. But if you dare slap Sidney Crosby's thumbnail photo on your trade board, you better watch out, because one particular beat writer out of Pittsburgh, a scribe, is coming from you with his the pen is mightier approach. Because look out, these are fighting words from one Josh Yohe.
Yeah, it's funny, by the way, that nobody ever wants Sidney Crosby to play with Noah Dobson, who I believe is also from Nova Scotia. Nobody ever says that. But anyway, so we have two Penguins related articles. One about this Crosby thing, and this was the one that we teased last week, with a tweet from the column's writer, Josh Yohe. And that was a very pointed tweet about how stupid it was that people were making these Sidney Crosby trade proposals to the Avalanche. And he blew this out into a whole article. And I'm only going to read the one section here. This is, of course, at The Athletic. And I highly recommend checking it out, because he does go on and on and on. But it's so funny that, like you just said, every other player, and there's like 700 players in the NHL, and every single one of them is an open target for any of these types of things. And Sidney Crosby is not. Like, we're not allowed to talk about Sidney Crosby in this context at all, which is a little ridiculous. But my favorite part of the article is right here. And it's a little bit after the lead. And it says, he, of course, being Crosby, he is willing to ride out a dark stretch because he believes the Penguins will turn it around before he hangs up his skates. It's what he wanted. He signed that contract in September. These are his wishes. Some of his former teammates don't have any respect for that. Every time trade talks involve the Colorado Avalanche, Crosby's name arises. His friendship with fellow Nova Scotian Nathan MacKinnon has made some people believe a Crosby trade to Colorado is a foregone conclusion. Paul Bissonnette and Ryan Whitney have made quite the post-playing careers for themselves. When they speak, the hockey world hears it. I get it. Seeing Crosby play with MacKinnon and Cale Makar would be entertaining. Seeing Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky play on the same NHL team would have been great fun too. So sure, I understand the fantasy of seeing an all-time great join with one of hockey's best and most entertaining teams. At some point, though, can't we just let this go? It's never going to happen. Which, of course, now makes me wish it would happen. But I love that he calls out Bissonnette and Whitney here. And those are the two former teammates, obviously, who were both Penguins. He gets into like what they said and stuff like that. And he also calls out Frank Saravalli for saying it. So it is funny that Yohe, who has a platform, is calling out Spit and Chicklets. That being said, this is all just like really just stamping feet and crying. Don't take my Sidney away, dude, he's already won everything he's going to win for your team. I really don't see what the point of saying it's never going to happen is. I don't think any Penguins fan out there is would all be all that upset if they did get traded. Because if you're going to get traded, it's really no better place than Colorado, right? It'd be better him getting traded there than like the Rangers or the Leafs, right? I'd rather see him go to Colorado. If I was a Penguins fan, at least I could root for them to win. But I thought this was a really funny article. It's a couple of days old now, but I thought it was very funny.
Oh, it's perfect. And I love the tweet that you alluded to that we used to tease last episode was you want to talk about stamp your feet. The words "enough is enough" is used by a professional sports writer talking about other professional sports commentators and pundits trying to trade one of the players on his team. That's what he's having a tantrum about. He is defending Sidney Crosby's honor,
Right.
which is already weird, but he's defending Sidney Crosby's honor because people are having a sports conversation you'd have at a sports bar, just they're doing it very publicly, and he's saying these people know better. I mean, Paul Bissonnette and Ryan Whitney, these guys should know better. Kevin Weeks, these guys should know better. Frank Seravalli. I mean, I don't. These aren't the type of folks that I would slap that label to, because that is kind of their job, is to be professional liars and
yes,
and just slap together rumors and trade boards. That's what they do, Josh, and that's how Sidney Crosby's name can come up. I love this one. This is so good. It's everything that is creepy and strange about how the de-evolution of sports and of hockey media, I should say. I don't really know if other sports do this with the defend the shield mentality of objective sports reporters who high five when their team scores a goal. It's so bizarre. And another situation where I really wonder if Josh Yohe was like waiting outside the locker room after this, because he wrote this. Sometimes datelines in articles crack me up, and this is one of those cases. It's just Dateline Seattle. This is a difficult period in Sidney Crosby's career. It's so funny to me that he is in a Seattle hotel room, jamming on his keyboards, being like, I got to get this out there before this fire gets too large and it can't be put out. I need to be the one to save Sidney Crosby here. When a Sidney Crosby can just as easily just come out to the media the next day and say, yeah, I've got a no trade clause. I'm not going to move it to go to Colorado. He needs Josh Yohe to do it. So yeah, banner start for Yohe on this episode of Master Pens Theater. It's been quite a week for hockey media, or quite a few weeks, I should say. And it's only going to get worse with the international tournament. And we mentioned it briefly, but the Ryan Callahan thing, which we should talk about it. I guess we'll talk about it when this episode of Master Pens Theater wraps up. So I don't want to get too off course here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Because we do have another Master Pens Theater here, and shout out to Brian who sent me this. And this is about a situation that the Penguins found themselves in a couple of days after the Rantanen trade. So again, as we mentioned, JT Miller was traded from Vancouver to the Rangers. You've already heard this. And as a response to that, the Canucks then turned around and took the first round pick that they got from the Rangers, sent it to Pittsburgh for defenseman Marcus Pettersson, which gives the Canucks 3 Petterssons on the roster, 2 of which are named Elias Pettersson, but that's a different story and a funny one. And so this immediately became kind of a secondary story to the Miller trade, which obviously had taken up most of the NHL's time and most of the air out of this season between his feud with Pettersson. And it was kind of a weird thing that came out of nowhere. And I thought that I was taking crazy pills for a moment, because I had not heard a single person say a single word about Marcus Pettersson this season at all. Like, Pettersson is a totally fine player who elicits no reaction from anybody, as far as I know, for his entire career. Like, he's just a totally okay player. And yet somehow he cost a first round pick. I don't know how this happened. And people are like, wow, that's a great trade for the Penguins. Or, no, sorry, let me back that up. And all of a sudden people were like, wow, that's a great trade for the Canucks. What a great deal that is. And I was like, huh? What? Why? What? Am I missing something? Like, the Islanders play the Penguins all the time. I don't know if I've never even noticed Marcus Pettersson on the ice. Like, he's just that kind of guy. Again, he's not bad. He's just not like a standout guy. And I was just like, was the Canucks problem defense? I thought their whole problem was 2 guys in the locker room hated each other's guts. Like, I don't know what else is going on. What is happening right now? Why are people praising the Canucks for getting this? And it turns out that, and I thought this was in the article. I'll read the part in a second. But basically what happened was the Canucks had targeted Pettersson for quite a while. And it wasn't until they got the first round pick that they went back to Dubas and were like, okay, what about this? Would you take this? And he was like, yeah, sure. Which to me signals that not that Kyle Dubas like extracted this first round pick from the Canucks. It's more like they offered a first round pick for this guy. And the Penguins would have been stupid to turn it down because that's insane. That's an insanely high price for a guy who's just sort of okay. And anyway, before I read the thing, like, what did you make out of that trade? Because to me, I was just like, are we talking about the same Marcus Pettersson that plays with the Penguins here? Like a guy I've literally never noticed on the ice once in however many games he's played against the Islanders, even in the same division as they are.
No, I had the same thought because the way people were talking about him, it's one of those classic situations where if you're in a division and a player plays for a rival, you feel like you know them really well, especially after years of watching with Pettersson. And I think if you ask me what Marcus Pettersson's strengths and weaknesses are as a player, I would say I've got no idea. I couldn't tell you a thing. I was like, I just know he's been on the Penguins for a while, and the Islanders play him a lot, and I think he's had a couple like little scraps in front of the net with a few players, and maybe that's that's really as deep as I can go on Marcus Pettersson here. But the whole and I do want to get into it, like the whole Miller scenario, which led to this and is leading to this episode of Master of Pens Theater. This episode's going to be quite long, so it's hard to jam this in. But another player who's like, I'm just going to go to that one team over there. Yeah. And the whole world, the whole hockey world's like, man, it's crazy. Who's involved with this one? Dallas? Could it be Dallas? He wants to go to a team in the States. It sounds like he prefers the East Coast. Oh, the Hurricanes are kicking the tires. Maybe the Blue Jackets or the Blues? No, we all know where this is going. Let's just get it over with. This player, like several before him, it's not a unique situation. Wants to go to one place and one place only, and they're going to get him for cheap, pennies on the dollar because A, he's an insane person, and B, he's got all the leverage with the no trade clause and will only waive it to go to the Rangers. So yeah, it's not lost on me that another player has found his way to doing that. And did I want JT Miller on the Islanders? No, I did not. But he's still a 100-point player from a year ago, and another situation where the Rangers just get an absolute gift from above while I watch, or excuse me, I should say, the Rangers potentially can get a gift from above while I had to watch Matt Barzal get bundled over in a heap. The first time I've ever seen him block a shot 5-on-6 in my entire career. So that wasn't lost on me. Anyways, back to your regular scheduled programming here on Master Pens Theater.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I everything you said is 100% true, but I give this 18 months before we start hearing like.
But that's the Rangers, problem. It's going to be 18 months where he does well, and then when he starts to peter out, they're going to be like, he's got a tough contract to move. This is going to be hard for the Kraken took him.
I've heard the Rangers are open to trading JT Miller, Kyle. It's like, I've heard. I kind of saw that coming there.
That's going to be tough for them to move, right, Elliot? Yeah, it's going to be tough. And next day, Anaheim Ducks trade a third-round pick for the entire contract for JT Miller, and also give the Rangers a first-round pick. Some stupid shit.
Yeah, that's all true. But anyway, with this Master Pens Theater, real quick, we'll finish it up with this. And again, shout out to Brian who sent me this. Basically, the crux of this entire article, which has a fantastic title. The title for this is Kyle Dubas stopped trying to please everyone, and the Penguins are better because of it. That is a killer title. And what makes it great is A, it's completely hyperbolic, and B, has absolutely nothing to do with the content of the article, which is basically that forget all the bad trades that Dubas has made. This one was good. And like he's finally found. So like there's no like one kind of thing to find here, but it starts out talking about his first summer. He signed Tristan Jarry and Ryan Graves. All right, so I'll start here. Well, no, let me start. So it starts out talking about how the Tristan Jarry and Ryan Graves contracts, which were the first two deals he signed, were bad. And since then, he's now on a heater. And so he goes through this whole list of deals that Dubas made that were terrible and how he fixed them. And even the fixes are kind of lame. So just as an example, this is my favorite one. And these are all like plotted out by months. So he goes, on August 13th, Dubas took full advantage of the Predators being over the salary cap. He was given Cody Glass, who has been a disappointment, but was and perhaps still is worth taking a gamble on. A third-round pick in 2025 and a 2026 second-round pick for Jordan Frasca, a prospect who is very unlikely to make the NHL. We don't talk about this trade enough. He took advantage of the Predators as a good manager should. So let me see if I got this right. He took advantage of the Predators to get Cody Glass, who has been a disappointment, but might still be worth taking a gamble on, got 2 mid-round picks, and gave up a guy who will unlikely play in the NHL. So how is this a good like, this is like straining the limits of, okay, and maybe those 2 picks turn into superstars, who knows, but like to use this as an example of, forget about the Jari trade signing, forget about the Graves signing, forget about the Gensel trade that made the entire locker room pissed off, forget about getting Riley Smith, who completely washed out, and then they had dumped onto the Rangers. He called him a malcontent here. Who was the guy who traded for Riley Smith in the first place? Oh yeah, by the way, that was Kyle Dubas. Somehow taking advantage of the Predators to get Cody Glass and 2 mid-round picks, it counts as, being on a heater. It's a very strange reasoning here, but I don't know.
Yeah. There's so much for me to sink my teeth into here. It starts with the title, as you said.
Yeah.
This is an all-timer. Because it's classic. It's classic of the Dubas genre. I mean,
Yeah.
Jonas Siegel, you're never going to beat Jonas Siegel and his article about how people were in mourning when people who were definitely not him were grieving about the loss of Kyle Dubas when they fired him as general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs for lying on national TV to everybody at the Ford Performance Center. But that does he got fired for lying. Let's not forget that, please. And then also lied when he got hired by the Penguins because he said he wasn't going to pop up somewhere else in 2 weeks, and then was with the Penguins 2 weeks later. So 2 lies there at the Ford Performance Center. It's like lying at church, Kyle. You can't lie at the Ford Performance Center. But it's a classic of the genre because Dubas is lauded anytime he makes a move, even before the move is panned out. Prime example, Riley Smith, as Jesse Marshall of the Pittsburgh Penguins media circles has said, Riley Smith will go on Kyle Dubas's Renaissance painting. 3 weeks later, Pittsburgh Penguins fans wanted this guy out off the team as quickly as they could get. So when Dubas does anything, even he saved Alex Galchenyuk.
Yeah.
Then he saved him again. He fixed them. Mike Amadio, Aaron Dell, all these guys that Dubas, these are always tidy pieces of business, shrewd moves from Dubas. But
he leads the NHL in tidy pieces of business, if I'm not mistaken.
When Dubas makes a mistake,
Hmm.
or when Dubas needs to be criticized as a general manager, the criticism is veiled in language that makes you think, well, it's not his fault that he made these mistakes. Kyle Dubas, the reason he made mistakes with the Penguins was because he was trying to please everybody. It was his bless his beating heart.
Right.
He's a saint, Kyle Dubas. He wanted everybody else to be, he put their happiness before the team, before winning. But once he stopped trying to do that, trying to be this saintly figure, now the Penguins are better. So it wasn't his fault. It's just his flaw. It's like when you're on a job interview and you're like, oh, what's your biggest strength or weaknesses? Well, my biggest weakness is that I try too hard. That's what Dubas is. He's too nice. He's so it all starts with the title. It's just a classic there. But I love that when he's writing out this, he's leaning into these bullet points.
Right.
Josh Yohe, he writes about the Jake Gensel trade and kind of how it's shaped out, and it's like, oh, the prospects are Ville Koivunen and some other guy, you can't pronounce his name. They're close to the NHL. Michael Bunting was also involved in that trade, and he scored 20 goals in 72 games with the Penguins. Blah blah blah. They also got this guy Cruz Lucius. It was a very the Jake Gensel trade, which was basically panned by everybody for because he didn't get enough for him. He summarizes, he does. It was a very, very good trade for the Penguins. Dubas was just getting started. Let's take a look at his trades since he dealt Gensel this year. He goes on to talk about Chad Ruhwedel.
Right.
To the Rangers for a 4th round pick, and he flipped that for Philip Tomasino, who's been pretty good. He scored 5 goals in 24 games for the Penguins.
5 goals in 24 games.
Yeah, big
Great.
series of and then he wraps up. So this is the pair. I got to read the whole thing. Chad Ruhwedel to the New York Rangers for a 4th round pick in 2027. Dubas later flipped that pick to the Nashville Predators for Philip Tomasino, who is 23, a former 1st round pick, and has scored 5 goals in 24 games with the Penguins. Ruhwedel is great, but he's 34 and has been in the AHL most of this season. Big series of wins here for Dubas. I would just call this like a normal trade that happens where like one guy goes, the other guy. Both have been unremarkable with their new teams. And then I love the second one, too. Dubas acquired Kevin Hayes from the St. Louis Blues at the NHL draft, which seemed odd since Hayes is on the back 9 of his career. Hayes has been fine, but more importantly, the Penguins received a 2nd-round pick for it. And they received a 2nd-round pick because they took this guy's contract on. Then he shipped malcontent Riley Smith to the Rangers, the malcontent he signed. Smith was a source of mediocre play and negative energy in the Penguins' dressing room all season. Who brought him here? It's like you said, it's so funny that this guy can, there's never any context to these trades unless it's to make him look good.
Right.
So it's classic. And more trades are coming too, by the way.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely.
So get ready
not
for
involving Sidney Crosby.
Right.
We have established that.
And I like the other thing I want to mention here is that he doesn't bring up the trade that he made when he traded for that guy Rutger McGroarty. Do you remember that whole saga from the offseason? And apparently he's just been terrible. He's just like probably gonna like flame out as a prospect. It sounds. He's in the AHL. He lasted like 5 games and he's not doing anything in the AHL. But not to Josh Yohe. He's summarizing the trades. He acquired a potentially foundational prospect such as Rutger McGroarty. Okay, says you. So yeah, it's great, and the whole crux of this article is basically that Dubas is not wasting Sidney Crosby's final years, right? Like, he's trying to make his years. Dubas is actually trying to make Crosby's final years special, because he and the way he sums it up is, he says, Dubas traded Gensel, and it made everyone mad. The dressing room sulked, the fans groaned. Sid's final years are being wasted, they said. No, they're not. Dubas is trying to make Crosby's final years something special and wants this franchise to be prepared to thrive after the captain is gone. The Penguins aren't there yet, and it will take considerable time until it happens. Another year or 2, but realistically, maybe longer. Okay, those are his final years. Those are Sidney Crosby's final years that you just summed up, saying you brought this up once about how sports writers can say something and then completely like contradict and argue against themselves in like a matter of sentences, which is what he does here when he says that they're not Sid's final years aren't being wasted, and then goes on to argue that they're actually 100% being wasted, and to the point where he says in the next paragraph that the path is clear. So I don't know what to say about this piece of writing other than it's an absolute tour de force in Sid washing, Dubas washing, the whole kit and caboodle. So tip your cap to Josh here. Just 2 home runs.
And I'm glad you brought up McGroarty because as of right now, 37 games in the AHL, 6 goals, 15 assists for 21 points. And I've been sitting on an article. I won't read the whole thing, but I've been sitting on this for a while. This was from when they made the trade back on August 22nd of 2024. And the title of it, also by Josh Yohe, was "With Penguins' Rutger McGroarty trade, Kyle Dubas starts to hit his stride." Okay.
Oh, man, I thought he hit it with the Chad Ruhwedel for a 4th round pick.
I thought it was trading malcontent Riley Smith to the Rangers. I thought that was hitting the stride. Apparently, no. It was the McGroarty trade that has yielded 21 AHL points and 0 NHL points. So this is all obviously hilarious and very funny. And that is your Master Pens Theater. But we're not done. We won't call this a Master Leaf Theater, although we could, but we do need to wrap this up at some point. But we've been talking about the JT Miller trade. We're obviously going to have a ton to talk about, I'm sure, at some point from our friend Brooksy and the other Rangers writers to make a Ranger Piece theater. But I did find this funny from the Canucks point of view. Obviously, we've been hearing about this feud between Pettersson and Miller this whole time, and it's done. Ian McIntyre is a guy who writes for Sportsnet. He's been covering the Canucks forever. And I was eager to read what he wrote about this. And this is after they had made the Marcus Pettersson trade. And the idea is that Pettersson needs to fill the hole now left by JT Miller, obviously. And so he talks about what came over from the Miller trade. And I thought this was funny. And it's a good way to bring it back to the Islanders, too. And you'll see why in a second. But McIntyre writes this. He says, the return for Miller is remarkably similar to the components Alvin acquired from the New York Islanders in the Bo Horvat trade almost 2 years ago to the day. Chytil is a center and slightly better player than former Islander Anthony Beauvillier, but Mancini is probably not quite the prospect that Aatu Räty was when he came to Vancouver. But the key to grading this trade, like the one 2 years ago, will be Pettersson as a payoff for the draft pick. 28-year-old top four defenseman is eligible for unrestricted free agency after this season. But if Pettersson can be re-signed and turns into another Filip Hronek, the defenseman Alvin grabbed from the Detroit Red Wings in exchange for the Islanders pick in 2023, then Vancouver can win the Miller trade too. Win that trade too. I'm sorry. Are you under the impression that Filip Hronek's a nice player, but are we doing further that Ian McIntyre is under the assumption that the Canucks won that trade?
Yeah. I mean, the guy from the Hockey News who said the Islanders are on a disastrous 7-game losing streak is still having a tantrum and wetting his diaper about the fact that Islander fans got mad that he graded it a D+. Yeah. Bo Horvat. Yeah. I mean, I guess you could say the Canucks won that trade.
I guess.
Yeah, go for it, man. I certainly haven't enjoyed having Bo Horvat here for the for his 162 games and his, 60 goals and a couple playoff appearances. Totally fun player to watch. 200-foot beast.
Makes fun of Vancouver.
Makes fun of Vancouver.
Week here.
Got lobbed a lawsuit from a NIMBY. Like it's this guy. I guess you guys won that trade.
I mean, it's funny. I was told that this was a lose-lose trade.
Yeah.
So there were no winners in this trade. Now the Canucks are the winners. I don't know. I kind of thought that the Islanders were the winners. When I saw this, I sent it to you in our group chat, and my words underneath it were just 2. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean 2? What are you talking about? But I guess the book is still out on Aatu Räty, who's played well, I guess, in the AHL for a while now. But I just found it funny that I was like, again, Hronek's a nice player and all, and that was a tidy piece of business, if I should say so, turning the first round pick into a solid top 4 defenseman. But this is if anything, this is a push. This isn't like they won and the Islanders lost, or the Islanders. You could even make the case that getting Hronek was a great deal for them. But if anything, both teams made out pretty well here, and I am willing to bet that Ian McIntyre has not watched 1 minute of Bo Horvat play for the New York Islanders that wasn't against the Vancouver Canucks.
Right. I'm gonna go on record here and say I think the Islanders won this trade.
Yeah,
and maybe it's not a landslide, like you said. Hronek's been good for them.
Yeah,
he had 48 points for them last year. Plays a lot of minutes, and him and Quinn Hughes are a good complementary pair. Like Bo Horvat is the Islanders' maybe their best player since he's come. So like consistently, he doesn't miss games. He's just, I mean, knock on wood. I say that I should have never fucking said that in this season, but he's playing. He's a great first line center. 200-foot player, doesn't really make mistakes. I trust him if he showed up to my, I'd trust him with my kids to like babysit, that kind of stuff. Like I love this guy. I think he's
Right.
awesome. And so I think I think you could say that the Islanders won that trade. It was still a D plus, but
Yeah, and a lose-lose.
it was a D plus, and this win streak 2.5 years later is disastrous.
Right. Yeah. But
God.
there you go. I know. I don't know. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
I think people think we sometimes overstate
Yeah.
the
ridiculousness.
the ridiculousness of the way the sport and the Islanders more specifically are covered.
Hmm.
And then when I see a story or a tweet like we saw today, calling it a 7-game winning streak to get this team, which has been absolutely cursed by injuries, back into the playoff push. Any other team that would be like, wow, what a gutsy thing going on. This,
Right.
you can't help but we don't root for teams, we root for players, but it's really hard not to root for this team right now, given what they're going through. Instead, it's disastrous. So when stuff like that comes out, I'm like, I feel almost a little vindicated. I'm like, yeah, we're not making this up. This is like it's a thing here. There's you said you keep receipts. There's receipts out there about the way that this team has been covered for 30 some odd years.
Right.
And the Bo Horvat trade is another example of it. This guy has been nothing short of terrific for the Islanders, and yet there's still people getting mad at Islander fans getting mad at them from 2 years ago because of the trade. So it's it really makes you want this team to stick around and Brock Nelson to sign like a 8-year extension tomorrow so they can all shut the hell up.
I had somebody in my mentions this week when I posted that article from the Hockey News saying like, why are they still mad at the Islanders? It's crazy how they talk about them. And our friend Ian _10 was like, I think they're mad about the Tavares thing still, about booing John Tavares. I think it might go back to that. And it's funny because I was thinking about this during the when we were reading about Crosby, which is like, for 2 years, everybody and their grandmother came out of the woodwork to talk about they should trade Tavares to here, to there, to everywhere, to my team, to that team. Now, listen,
Right.
the Crosby has 3 Stanley Cups. He's one of the greatest players of all time. I mean, I'm not trying to take anything away, but there's a huge gulf of difference between those two players, especially at that time. But I don't remember anybody, even us, we were like, yeah, well, what are you going to do? Like, nobody got up on a soapbox and tried to like stop people from making trade requests. I
don't know if we said enough is enough.
Yeah, that's enough. I mean, I wrote an entire encyclopedia. It was like literally 90,000 words of people saying, trade John Tavares to my team, you scumbags. You're not worthy of him. So it's just funny to me. But I think it goes back to that. For some people, I mean, the guy who wrote that at the Hockey News isn't old enough, but for some people, it might go back to 4 straight Stanley Cups in the 80s, man, and beating the friggin' Oilers in 83, right?
Beating Gretzky, right.
Shit. And Billy Smith, like, chopping at Gretzky and saying 2 can play at that game. Like, it's just, I think this hatred runs a lot deeper than we might be.
I think so too. I think part of it is like the Islanders were just such a laughing stock for so long.
Yeah.
And they were almost like a blight on the league.
Right.
In a way.
Yes. Also true.
They were like, get these guys to Kansas City or Quebec or Hamilton.
Yeah.
And the Islanders kept existing, and it bothered them that they couldn't get the. I mean, we're not even gonna have time to talk about the Utah debacle, but we're gonna need to get into that, like how the league is gonna be better with Ryan Smith, the savvy businessman in it, who doesn't know anything about trademark law or is now running his like 8th different poll. Pathetic stuff. It's so awful. Pathetic. Like I can't believe how much I despise Utah Hockey Club because of this guy. With each passing day, I'm like, I hate this. I hate this team.
The logos came out, and Frank Saravalli earlier tonight was like, "These aren't the finalized logos. These could be different." Dude, what are we doing here? I don't want to be. If I'm going to be in a focus group, you got to send me money. Like that's how this works. Send me $100, and I'll tell you all you need to hear about this logo and the team and everything.
Frank, I'll tell you who's on who what we're doing with Nick Bugstag first. If you make sure that these people know,
right,
that these are not the final logos. Make sure you tell them it's not the final logos. It's been pathetic.
It's just
I'll end with the Callahan thing, kind of lumping it all together,
Yes.
which is that the state of the NHL right now is that they are going. They're going to hear a lot about the salary cap increase, and that it's the salary cap going up, and these franchise valuations are like a sign of a healthy league. Okay, but if it's a healthy league, why am I watching? Why am I reading, or why are my options for like those covering it these kind of situations where we got one of the media outlets that is the biggest is essentially just a PR arm for every team that they cover, not including like ours and the Florida Panthers and the other smaller teams, but to the point where teams are hiring those writers to then become their PR, their communications directors. So there's that, and then there's the television broadcasts, at least here in the States, where either your options, if you're on ESPN, are very limited. It's rolling the dice, and the odds are usually stacked against you getting a good broadcast team.
Yeah.
You get John Buccigross, who is just absolutely terrible to listen to, and he'll be with his running mate Ryan Callahan. And I was so happy I wasn't the only one who like picked up on that right away, because Max Siplikov and Scott Lawton fight. The Islanders win that game against the Flyers. They fight, and that was the third of three meetings. Or excuse me, third of three meetings between these two teams in 2 weeks. Max Siplikov was suspended for 3 games in the first one for lining a guy up. It wasn't like he hit, it was like the end of a period and like the guys got sent to the locker room. Like he hit the guy, was getting chased around for the entire game, and then got suspended. So it was in the news cycle. Max Siplikov suspended 3 games. There's no excuse not to know that.
Right.
But because hockey is so far down the totem pole, as we're all going to find out once again when this Four Nations face-off comes and goes and nobody bats an eyelash, it's just nobody's ever going to get held accountable for it, and you're going to have to just suffer through these broadcasts for a long time. And I always think back to the last Stanley Cup final, whatever. The ESPN had a Stanley Cup final with game 1 where like the audio wasn't synced up with the video with the Panthers game, and that was a Stanley Cup final, and they were just like, whatever. Can't fix this. And once you do, like, if that was the week 16 of an NFL season in a game between two teams that were like 3-13, it would have been a huge story. But here it doesn't matter, and that's the sign of a healthy league right now, is that the coverage is just irritating more than anything, and the broadcasts are even worse. So,
I'm glad you brought up the NFL, because the only thing I'm going to say about this is that I was thinking about this while watching that Flyers Islanders game, and that Ryan Callahan, the combo of Ryan Callahan and John Buccigross is kryptonite to potential NHL viewers. It is absolute kryptonite. These guys are like just two stupid dudes, by the way, having a conversation while a hockey game is going on. Like, they're not calling the game so much as they're just talking, and then stuff happens. And it is impossible for me to think that when the NHL made this deal, which is a very lucrative deal with ESPN to air these games, that this is what they thought they were getting. Like, Bob Wischusen is good. Steve Levy is pretty good still on play-by-play, although he was on the studio. I don't like it when he's in the studio because he gets a little too chummy and it's a little grating. But if I was a first-time NHL viewer and I put on this game, I would be like, this is what a hockey game is supposed to sound like? I don't know if it sounds weird. Like, do these guys, are they always like this? Is this the lead team? Do these guys, have they ever watched this sport before? It's very minor league. It's very sort of high school, amateur hour, kind of high school play-ish. And I'm glad you brought up the NFL, because it made me think, you put on Monday Night Football, and who do you hear? You hear Joe Buck and Chris Collinsworth. Now, Chris Collinsworth is one of the most irritating broadcasters I've ever heard in my entire life, but that sounds like what a football game is supposed to sound like, right? Like, I think Joe Buck is great. And I get it. It's Monday Night Football versus a throwaway NHL game on a Tuesday or a Thursday, whatever it was. But like, one sounds like how the sport should sound. and the other sounds like two guys just talking while a game is happening without any kind of care or knowledge of what's actually going on. And I mean, you could extrapolate this to anything. Like, even the games with Al Michaels. Al Michaels is 80 years old, and it still, to me, sounds like what a football game is supposed to sound like. Any of those, I mean, listen, I watch the Jets, and I always feel bad for the guys who get stuck with those games. Spiro Ditas, I don't know what this guy did in a former life to get stuck calling New York Jets games for a living, but it sounds like a football game is supposed to sound. Like, I just, name a baseball team. Like, it sounds like what they're supposed to sound like. This just, I don't know, it's just wrong. And I can't imagine what they want. And I'm with you. Like, how is this possible?
It's not only is it possible, it's year 3 or 4 of whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not going to change. Like, this is what they signed up for. This is what they think we like. Like, and I think that's what it is. I think that it's the powers that be think that this is what hockey. Oh man, wouldn't it be cool to have Bucci call your team?
Bucci loves hockey. Why wouldn't they love having him on there?
Bucci was the hockey guy at ESPN back when hockey was in the dark ages. He sometimes would even like mention the Tampa Bay Lightning in SportsCenter when they wouldn't even show highlights. Like, this is cool, right?
Right.
No, it's terrible. It is so bad. And you brought him up before. It would be they sound like they're trying to be Paul Bissonnette and Ryan Whitney calling a hockey game.
Right.
And I'm so mad that I shouldn't say that. I'm very proud of whatever Islander fan called Ryan Callahan an asshole on the concourse, if that's a true story that Bucci Gross told. So good for you.
Good on you, sir.
Yeah, whoever it was, great job to that Islander fan. That said, I'm a little disappointed that you didn't get both of them. Because there's nothing that would make me happier than to watch John Buccigross, who you can tell thinks the entire world likes him.
Right.
This is a guy who thinks like he's beloved.
It's God's gift.
Yeah. To hear from the people who he's talking to on these broadcasts, just be like, you're not good at this. I think it would have been great. But yeah, it's been this has been the stuff like we've been dealing with on the periphery of the Islanders' insane saga that's going on, right? Like it's where I've got Adam Boquist on my team now, but I'm also dealing with this kind of bullshit.
Right.
The JT Miller trade, the Dubas glorification articles, John Buccigross calling games, Ryan Callahan asking if there's history between Max Siplikov and the Philadelphia Flyers a week after he got suspended for injuring a Philadelphia Flyer and getting chased around the ice by them. Wasn't even like a year ago. It was a week ago, man. It's been a very it's like trying, but usually when we've been talking about these weeks being exhausting, it's been because the Islanders are pissing us off because they're losing games and blowing leads and not killing penalties. Right. Now it's just turning. It's like the opposite. It's they've got us back. We're charging forward, but we're still dealing with all this bullshit on the side. And I just wish we could focus on winning and beating. Well, I mean, we can, but we choose not to focus on beating Vegas and getting these guys into the break with still in the mix here. But it's just been a. I feel like there's just shrapnel everywhere in my Islander fan mind here. It's like it's like the Blitz in 1940. Like, you just go to bed, you wake up, and you're like, we got to take inventory and see who's still around. And there's Brock over there. Oh no, it looks like Barzell's gone. I just don't want to be bombarded anymore. I just want them to stabilize.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect way to tie it back to what we started 2 hours ago almost, in that, this feels like you're in a foxhole and there's just explosions happening everywhere. And you're just trying to like kind of understand what's going on. And all it is a hockey season. Like, I know it's crazy, but this is one of the more insane and crazy and kind of like mind bending times we've ever had in the 9 seasons of this show, which is kind of crazy that, we've been doing it this long and we still have our minds about us, but there's still 30 more games to go. And that's a lot. And there's 3 games this week that could go a long way to determining how the other 27 after that go. So we're just going to hang on. we are with you in the foxhole. We know we're all together with the Islanders. Mark Gatcomb is out there running recon and looking, telling us what's going on out there.
He would be like
past
that
the
kind of
horizon.
guy running around,
Yeah,
like, with
100%.
the helmet, like shaking off his head, running from
Right.
foxhole to foxhole. Here,
Yeah.
you okay?
Yeah.
Like a medic kind of guy. He
Right.
looks like he would be. He might have played a medic in Band of Brothers. Now that I think about it,
He's got the binoculars out, and meanwhile, like, in a bunker with maps is Patrick Waugh, Anders Lee, Bo Horvat, like the leadership, Nelson, like the leadership guys,
Yeah.
and Anders Lee's suit, out, the uniform is perfectly pressed. His
yeah,
tie is tucked
boots-
into like the
boots are great. Yeah,
yeah, haircut all
Oh,
ready to go. His
God,
chin
yeah.
is ready. He's ready to fight. So these are hyperbolic analogies, but this is how it feels. Gotta be honest, it does feel this way. So strap in, because we got a long time to go. But we will be back next week. We can help you relax perhaps a little bit later this week with a brand new episode of Weird Islanders, a podcast that we actually just recorded yesterday. So it's a very rare, quick turnaround, but it'll make a lot of sense when you hear it. It involves some current events that we thought we had to jump on and give a Weird Islanders spin to. So I think you'll really all like it. And that comes out later this week. It's been a long time, so I won't do the whole spiel. Sign up at the patreon.com/IslandersAnxiety. Leave us a review where you can, please. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. Our theme song is Morning Haze by Family Dinner. Check them out. God Looks Out for Fools is their album. They have a new song out, by the way. They're a video on YouTube for a song called MPDG by Family Dinner. Read Lighthouse Hockey, obviously, every single day. We are part of the Fans First Sports Network. Shop VintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. Thank you to Pitney Bowes for being the official shipping partner of the New York Islanders. Mike, where can everybody find you on Twitter?
The Big Lebowski with 2 E's.
Follow Mike at the Big Lebowski, and we'll be back next week. There's no point in a final word because we've been talking for 2 hours here, but it's been a lot. So let's take a deep breath and see what comes up next. Okay, thank you very much for listening, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.